Thank you all for being here today. We're very excited to talk about the journey to zero net energy with our experienced panelists. Just a quick agenda. We're gonna do some quick introductions. Consumers and Western, they both have some slides they want to share to go through first. And then we'll do about an hour of prepared questions with about 20 minutes of Q&A. And then after this, there's an optional tour of the hotel, and you will meet down at the bottom of the ballroom stairs after the panel. I'll have some more information about that once we're done. But with that, my name is Kayla Musel. I'm the new program manager for U.S. Green Building Council of West Michigan. Before this, I was about, 3 weeks ago, I was working for Eric over here. This was not planned, but I'm really happy to get to talk to Eric a little bit on stage and also get to know the two of you and what you've worked on. So if you guys want to start your introductions, you can go for it.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Nielsen. I work at Consumers Energy. My team manages our electric transportation, our renewables, and our storage programs. So 3 of the big tools towards zero net energy. My colleagues here in front of me represent some of the other tools, big ones around energy waste reduction and demand response. So between all of us, we're representing the tools that we have for zero net energy today.
Do you have those consumer slides? I think it's right after.
Oh, do I keep rolling?
There we go.
Okay. So what we're really proud of at Consumers is that we have been here since 1886. We're a Michigan-based utility, which means that we can really zero in on what's best for Michigan and knowing where we're heading. You can see some of our stats here in terms of what we provide and who we hire. I'd say for myself, what I love about working here is that we are providing this essential life service every single day, heat and light, to our neighbors and coworkers. And then we're also, just in the last 5-10 years, really embracing the challenges around climate change and where we need to head, as you can see with our clean energy plan. So the headline here is that we plan to retire all of our coal-fired power plants by 2025. As of 2016, we had 15 or 16 coal plants running. We retired half of those in 2016, and now we're on track to retire the rest by 2025, which is a very big deal. It's not just about turning the off button on a plant. There's a lot of complications around making sure there's power to replace that we figure out how to recoup that investment and make sure that our utility customers aren't paying unduly for that. But we've worked really hard to figure out how we can make that happen. The Clean Energy Plan, just to back up, is something we do every 3 years that looks out across the next 20 years. How are we going to provide energy in the most economical and planet-friendly way? And what we're really excited about is that we found a way to do that with this coal retirement by 2025, as well as a lot of renewables being added, which you can see here. So punchline here, by 2025, when we do retire those coal plants, we'll be at 35% renewable, and we'll be cranking towards 2040, where we're over 60% renewable. And you can see the breakdown here on the right. The far left is where we were at in 2020, and you can see where we're heading. Obviously, the huge growth is that yellow bar, which is going to be solar. To put it into context, we're planning to add 8,000 megawatts of solar. Our current grid right now for peak capacity is about 8,200 megawatts. We can't count all 8,000 of those megawatts towards solar. It's discounted about 50%. So it's about 4,000 megawatts in reality of solar. So it's about half the grid by 2040, which is a lot of solar. So if anyone has land, please reach out to me after this. We are actively looking. But you can see where we're heading there, and you can see that there's a lot of things being used in the toolkit there, but you see coal and nuclear phasing out pretty quickly as we pull from those other resources. Yep, I already hit that 8,000 number on solar. And then to tie it back to today, so net zero, this is a couple of our highlights here on our march to net zero, and we actually have a handout on this that we can pass out after this, but some of the highlights here, I mentioned 2025, no coal. By 2030, we're committed to net zero with our methane emissions, which half of our business is on the natural gas side, and we use a lot of natural gas on our electric side too, so that's a big commitment. And another thing that I'm excited about is this 20% customer emissions reduction. So we could have stopped and said, we're only going to care about the emissions that we produce with natural gas. And even though we're pumping hundreds of cubic units of gas to our customers, how they burn it on their end isn't up to us. But we are taking those emissions into account, those Scope 3 emissions. And so we are actively thinking about how do we clean up those emissions as well. By 2040, we will have figured that out and have net zero across all electric operations, and then by 2050, ultimately across our gas business as well. So that is our march forward. As you see at the bottom, I mentioned some of the tools in our toolkit. We have carbon offsets available today. My team launched that 2 months ago. We're actively building out a renewable natural gas product. Energy efficiency, we are a national leader. We have been for over a decade in this space, and then a lot of fun stuff to come with electric vehicles, renewables, storage, who knows what else is coming. So it's an exciting time. So I'll leave you with a call to action. You can see on the left here some websites to track down these specific tools in our toolkit, but also please reach out to myself or any of my colleagues. We have a table downstairs if you want to know more. So thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pete Strasness. I'm the Associate Vice President of Facilities Management at Western Michigan University. I'm on my last 2 weeks of 43 years of employment. So just briefly, I began teaching at Western 79, 89, 10 years teaching College of Engineering. Then I worked in operations, capital construction, and the last decade and a half as the Chief Facility Officer for the university. Great run, great partners. As a matter of fact, I look across this room, I think I know half of you here that have done business with us. So thank you very much for your time with me and my time with you and my journey at Western Michigan University. So Western's journey of carbon neutrality, net zero, and we have been on a journey, but our journey started a long time ago. So I put the punchline up here. 70% reduction GHG, and that is not a guesstimate, ladies and gentlemen, that is an accurate number. So I hope all of you know that you do have metrics to measure this stuff, GHG, Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3. I'm sure many of you know about it. If you don't, please understand those 3 different scopes. So we have been measuring Scope 1 and 2, which of course is our self-generation, and what we buy from Sarah 2, Consumers Energy, and our high, as you can see, was 1990. Yes, we had a coal plant. Yes, what happened from 1990 to 2000, we transferred the coal plant to a cogeneration plant. But, and of course, that's that nice slide down as we get to the last 30%. And we're on a journey, gang. I don't have a specific destination, don't have a specific deadline. Presidents, students, everyone has things in their mind, but we are on a journey, and I hope you all are on your journey, and I hope that you know where you started, how you got to where you are today, and where you're going to be going tomorrow. So, and again, that last 30% is going to be heavy lift for my successor, but all of you do have heavy lifts for where you're at today and where you're going to be going. I hope everyone in this room is on that journey. I don't know where you're at, but I hope you know where you're at, and I hope you know how to get there. So, I have 3 other slides here, talking with Sherry and Kayla. First of all, I want to thank both of them for the invitation. I get around the country quite a bit in my role as Higher Education Facility Officer, and I do see a lot of USGBC folks. I've been in Washington, D.C. several times, and this is one of the most awesome chapters. Let's give them a round of applause. Those from USGBC, Grand Rapids. They are awesome. So thank you for the invitation. They've asked me to focus on 3 things. One is some of the tactical things we've done, and I could have gone for hours here. There's so many things, but I want to touch on some of the big ticket items that got us that 70% reduction. My next slide will talk about our university culture, our team culture, which of course, if you don't have a culture, some of the stuff doesn't happen. And lastly, I didn't do much. I need a lot of help, and I think many people in this room got us there, especially Consumers Energy and USGBC. I'll talk about that. So tactical things, I did tip my hand early on for that first decade. Yeah, we went from a coal plant to a cogeneration plant. Yeah, we do have 2 5-megawatt turbines. They're Siemens, they were Rolls-Royce, the turbines bought by Siemens. As a matter of fact, one's being replaced this month. And so we have 2 25,000-pound boilers back of those 2 turbines. So we have 10 megawatts out of that. We have a full megawatt steam turbine, and we just put on 2.5, so we got 5 megawatts of peakers. And today we've got everything running, as you can imagine. And I don't know, Sarah, do we have a energy reduction demand day today, do you know? Did consumers press that button today, do you know? A demand day. No, not yet, so.
Oh, demand day.
Demand
Not
day.
yet, that's why Nate's here.
Yeah, no demand day yet. So today could have been a demand day, and I got a text this morning from MISO. MISO might have an energy emergency too for Mid-Continental, but so we've got everything running, and that has been instrumental at our power plant to, of course, eliminate that. And by the way, that free steam on the back end, truth be known, I guess John's here and a few others that did calculations for us over the years, but 50% of our heat load on campus is free steam. That's the byproduct, of course, from making electricity, so 50,000 pounds an hour, and that is loading our campus at 50% of our entire steam demand is from a waste energy, no carbon obviously used to create that steam. So again, that's part of our success story. Second one is capital renewal. We've been on this great tier, had some great presidents, John Dunn, if some of you remember him. His middle name was Sustainability Lead, I forget which one it was, but he was really, really big on that. And so we have 19 buildings, almost 1.5 million square foot. LEED, we have 1 platinum, which is awesome. We got that for John Dunn on his way out. Our oldest building, 1904, renovated that to a platinum, LEED platinum. And we have 4 pending right now, 1/3 square feet in the process. I think we're also, remember Jonathan, remember that, or others, we had our first USGBC existing building. We were the first existing EB building in the state of Michigan, so we're proud of that, working with USGBC on that. Building commissioning. Gosh, I remember back in the day when I was telling my boss about this thing called commissioning, and he says, you're already paying an architect so much money, you're paying a construction manager so much money, why in the heck you want to hire another consultant for a certain percentage? And of course, I go back many years, and we're struggling with some of the buildings we've had back in the day that were never commissioned. And so we started the new building commissioning, which of course we enjoying the LEED points out of that. That's been a great run. Retro commissioning. As a matter of fact, we're doing retro commissioning prior to doing some of the new building commissioning, fixing the sins of the past. And the coolest thing we got going right now, as you can see, is monitoring-based commissioning. That is crazy great stuff. And so we're seeing return on investment 1 year, 1.5 years on that. So we've got hundreds of thousands of points in our system, a centric control system. Again, my portfolio is 8 million gross square feet, 150 buildings. And with that, that monitoring-based commissioning has gone a long way for us. And so I've got 19 buildings. I'd like to add 3 or 4 more every year for monitoring-based commissioning. Renewable energy. Thank you, Partners Consumers Energy. Solar garden. So we were thinking solar garden and didn't have the capital, and I was talking to some other folks in leadership at Consumers Energy. They were thinking of it too. Great minds came together. Consumers Western, and we even got Grand Valley in the gig, so the first 2 solar gardens in Michigan through Consumers Energy, my friends up at Allendale and us in Kalamazoo partnered together. They got, what, 1.5, 2 megawatt solar garden. We got a megawatt solar garden, went online about the same time. And we leased the land to them, and I guess I'm sure Sarah can share with you what great deal she can offer you if you have land. But we have the notoriety. Everyone says, cool solar panels, Pete. Well, it's kind of consumers and us, but so it does work well, and it was a good deal for us financially, practically, politically, and the students love it. Right off of 131, a bazillion cars go by, and they thank consumers and thank Western for that. It's on our College of Engineering campus, so they gave us some money for our engineering students to do some cool things there too, and our engineering students engage with consumers on the solar garden. Yes, we do have some geothermal. As a matter of fact, a shout out to that gentleman in the green shirt right there. Front page of, which magazine? ASHRAE Journal, the ASHRAE Journal, and that, let's give him a round of applause. And so we dabbled in the space of geothermal, and then we took our oldest building. We were shooting for LEED Platinum, which we did achieve that, and that geothermal was what helped us get us there. So thank you for that. Assessing and adjusting facility portfolio. higher education is not a good market to be in right now unless you're at University of Michigan, Michigan State, but every university in the country is seeing a drop in enrollment. We're no different, okay? Not as bad as the 3 or 4 of our peers in Michigan, but so with that problem comes an opportunity. Where there's a crisis, there's an opportunity. We are seeing drop in enrollment, so I've been on a tear for the last decade, finally getting traction with my leadership that we're looking at space utilization. Quite frankly, higher education is not the poster child of space utilization. And maybe the office sector is not the poster child right now with a lot of vacancies, but great opportunities to rethink, reimagine, redo, change a culture in higher education of space utilization. And so I have raised more buildings in the last 3 years than I built in 20. Seriously. And there was an opportunity for us to eliminate deferred maintenance. And you know what? A famous person, maybe it was Sarah said, that famous person once said that the most energy efficient building is the building never built. And so we're trying to get the most energy efficient buildings being eliminating buildings, and I'm decreasing my deferred maintenance, obviously lowering my carbon footprint, so you saw that it's nice steady declines, probably because of raising buildings. And so I looked at, I called the power plant on the way here this morning, and I said, what was the export from our plant electrically? And so we were at 13.5 megawatts. We generated 10. Sarah's trying to sell me 3.5 yesterday, megawatts. So we were traditionally 16 to 17 megawatts on a day like this in the past. So we dropped 4 megawatts just by raising a lot of buildings, consolidating buildings, being more energy efficient from the standpoint of not energy conservation stuff, just simply eliminating portfolio that you're dying, you're swimming, you're choking with the problems with deferred maintenance. And reuse when possible. So we do like to look at synergies and reusing assets on buildings, and find those synergies has made a big difference for us. The second one is organizational culture. What's your culture in your organizations? We'll probably have the moderator ask that question of the audience, but if you don't have top-down culture, you're not going to go anywhere. If you don't have bottom-up, if you don't have the technician giving ideas to us as management and running with those ideas, you're not going to go anywhere. And laterally, of course, it's a big pyramid called the university. So I got faculty folks, the academy to work with. I've got other offices to work with, deans to work with. I've got Office for Sustainability to work with. So starting from the top down, I've been blessed with presidents in the past, and our present president, Dr. Montgomery, focuses on this, and he instituted a new commission of students and faculty to work on carbon neutrality. So I do have top-down support, and you tell in your own head, do you have top-down support? Are you the top giving top-down support? And from bottom up, I'm at a university. Every student is demanding it, okay? So they have 1,000 ideas, they're in the president's office, they're in my office, what are we doing about it? So trust me, I got plenty of bottom up from the students, but yet the facility team, and John and others know in our facilities team, great ideas, and of course my role is to feed the ideas, implement the ideas, and if the day I stop that, the day everything's gonna stop from bottom up. So I've been feeding that culture from bottom up, and it's easy with students, and it was easy for me to feed that culture with our staff. In the middle, yeah, great Office of Sustainability, and they have done a lot of great things. They're not in charge, I'm not in charge, we collaborate. A lot of collaboration with those that are in our space, and again, I have to deal with more than sustainability. I got a full portfolio of planning, construction, raising, I got staffing problems, I got union problems, I got a whole bunch of stuff, but the fun space is collaborating on something I believe in and something they believe in, and something the top down and bottom up believe in. So it makes my job a lot easier there. Business partners. I can look across this room, I don't want to shout out too many people, but Armstrong Merlo, I mean, we got the Governor's Energy Award before there was an energy award 35 years ago. Okay, with our STEAM track management program, which was awesome. And so many great people in this room that helped me, and I want to thank all of you on my journey with those business partners, and especially consumers and USGBC. So how do we get support? I just touched on that. USGBC, I hope that in the question and answer session, that they can help you in your journey. They have products, they have tools, they have education. Use it. Don't go alone. And certainly Consumers Energy with so many cool ideas. Well, I didn't put on my screen, we had 20 new charging stations that Sarah, our president, cut a ribbon on a few weeks ago. It really didn't drop our GHG, but that is one of a zillion programs. And a great shout out to your public utilities, and obviously from the east side of the state, DTE, I'm sure has great programs, but connect with your folks, JJ, the whole consumers team. They are awesome to work with, great to work with, and sometimes it doesn't work, many times it does. Leverage it, push it, make it work. Don't do it alone. And certainly we do a lot with energy conservation. Of course, I put Franklin's name there, but they are a business partner, I believe, with Consumers Energy for our energy conservation stuff. I think today they're having another WebEx meeting because we've got a zillion, we've got 2 spreadsheets full of energy conservation projects that just never end. So where's your spreadsheet with Consumers Energy for energy conservation projects? Get on the bus, get the help, and get going in that space. And so our journey, I'll put 2 quotes here, and it's very important. The first one is the famous one from Peter Drucker: if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So are you managing your GHG reduction? And if you're doing that, how are you doing that? What are you measuring? You get your scope 1. Of course, I got a scope 1 and 2 because we do power generation, but if you're importing, it's easy to look at those bills and convert that to GHG and trying to look at that number. And so for our, if you don't quantify your GHG emissions at the building or campus level, will you know where you are on the journey? And I didn't know where I was early in the journey because we were going 35 years ago, 30 years ago, doing the right thing, gut feelings. We knew the main power plant meter was going down, and so I invested $1 million. Interesting conversation with my boss, investing $1 million in meters, 150 building sub-meters. How much did the GHG go down? Nothing. So I spent $1 million, but then I had the meters in all those buildings, the sub-meters, and now from that point forward, I'm using that with my boss of saying $500,000 for this building, $250,000 for that building, and I can measure that at that building level. So, of course, in the for-profit sector, of course, you have meters on your buildings. In a campus like ours, you probably don't have meters in 100 buildings. You have a meter at your main power plant. So sub-metering was important for us, and it was terribly important for us to quantify as well as arm wrestle, argue, win more financial dollars so we can do more things to lower our GHG, lower operating costs. And it's music to my bosses there when I'm saying, can you give me $1 million? I'll pay you back in a year. Thank you, consumers and others. So those have been very beneficial to us. My message to all of you is, got to measure it. And where are you at on your journey without measuring it? I don't know where you're at. My last slide here is we do a lot of measuring here. These are just a few other things. We measure against peer groups. So this is all high research universities across North America, okay? And so we're pretty proud of our electrical, as you can see, square foot electrical, and then we got our water consumption, recycling, garbage waste, carbon footprint. So we do a lot of measuring each year. We report it, and I hope that the other universities are ethical because we think we are. It's self-reporting stuff, which is interesting. So, but we do try to get a feel for how we're doing. But if you don't benchmark against yourself, and I don't know how the for-profit sector benchmarks against 2 different industries, and if you can't benchmark against your peer group, at the end of the day, look in the mirror each year. Look at your own data each year. You can move the dial, and you might not know if you're doing better in your industry sector or not. But there is a way to look in the mirror each month, each year, and move the dial. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll end it there, and we'll pass it off to the next person.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Eric DeVries. I am president and founder of E3m Solutions. Right? We might look at this and say, why do we have a utility and a large university and a small business up here? Well, the reason we do is because small businesses represent a large portion of the portfolio in Michigan and throughout the country. I heard a statistic at one point, 91% of buildings in Michigan are under 20,000 square feet. Right? So if we think about square footage impact and what that means from an energy efficiency and a carbon reduction standpoint, everything that Western is doing, everything the utilities are doing is utterly important. But if we don't take it down to the level of the small business as well, we're missing a huge portion of the market. So introducing myself, president and founder of E3m Solutions. We are 8 years old as a business. We describe ourselves as a hybrid of an energy consulting and an energy engineering firm. Our tagline is, how do you be financially sustainable, environmentally responsible to have a positive human impact? We want to do that. We want to bring that to new designs. We've had the privilege of doing some large buildings here in Grand Rapids, 22-story high-rise that's going to hit the market here shortly, all the way down to we've worked in mom-and-pop grocery facilities, mom-and-pop pharmacies in rural communities, because we firmly believe in everything that Western is doing and Consumers is doing, DTE is doing. We've got to take that to the level of small and mid-sized businesses as well, because if we don't make that impact, we're really missing out on a major contributor oftentimes to emissions and to energy consumption. Larger organizations sometimes have more access to capital, have more readily available capital, because they're not reducing their own pay in order to invest in their building that sometimes we see at a small business level. So that's why I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here today, and hopefully can bring a slightly complementary perspective to what my counterparts are here.
Great, thank you all. I feel like that was a lot of information, and I promise my questions will go into depth on a lot of it, even though I feel like we just went over most of zero net energy. But to kind of bring it back to the base level, I just want to say, zero net energy, we're focusing on that your building doesn't consume more than it can produce either on-site or off-site through renewables. So that is the goal of what we're talking about. There's scope 1 through 3. There's all this jargon and talk. So if there's any questions, don't feel like it's silly at the end. Everyone's coming from a different starting point here. So the first question I have is kind of be for Consumers and Western. What pushed you towards zero net energy? I know you talked a lot about the students and the culture there being top down and bottom up, but do you know of like an initial push for you? And then you can talk to consumers, your goals, and then also maybe the programs as well.
Yeah, why don't you go first, and then we can talk about how we.
Sure. I'm old, so go back to '79. Go back to early 1980, double-digit inflation, gas prices, all those things, and the oil embargo era. And so I grew up in Boston. I remember going in gas lines with my dad, waiting in lines to get gas, and between those cultural times and early part of my career, I said, you know what, this ain't Kansas no more, Dorothy. There has to be a transformational change in the way we do things with facilities. And I got pretty geeked up on therm walls, triple walls, all that stuff, which was early on in the construction methodology, construction discipline. There weren't any energy codes back then. I mean, hell, if you go back really way back, buildings that you all designed, your predecessors designed, leaked purposely. There was purposeful infiltration. And obviously that I lived through that transformation from purposeful infiltration to living in a plastic bag that we had to bring outside air in a residential home. Who would have thought that would have to have fresh air in a residential home? It was designed to leak. And because of that cultural movement and those periods in my time of life that I was into this whole technology thing. And so I got involved in facilities at Western, taught it, and so I brought that culture into our team of doing things more cost effectively. Why? It was simply the right thing to do. And I believed in my heart of hearts was the right thing to do. So that was my foundational piece. And then, of course, other things happened around us, such as, boy, the governor way back in the day said we had to cut energy. And before my watch, you know what they did for energy conservation at Western in the early 80s? If you had a 4-tube light fixture, you took out 2 tubes. So it was a little bit darker, but we saved energy. I mean, that was the early part of my growing up in facilities. And ever since then, the industry sector, you all, manufacturers started, of course, do the right things. Codes started to come in play to do the right thing. So I was ingrained early on in my culture of some of these early things. And then thank you to the great engineers in this room. I see Kelsey back there. She's done a great job for us, energy conservation with Franklin and consumers. But all those things that you have given us, because you're probably ahead of the curve more than I am. You live in that space. That is your job. I'm an owner. So those things that you brought to my table that fit my DNA was a perfect marriage and a match to do those things early on. And then, of course, it's been a bus ride ever since with more stuff coming. And now climate change and everything, we've really got to move this bus forward. And somehow, some way, we need to accelerate it with other ideas from the folks in this room. Our public utilities have opportunities. So what really got us going was that. And then we got put on steroids with students wanting to recycle. I mean, I never recycled in Boston growing up. Did any old timers here recycle? But we got everyone coming to our campus like, where's the recycle bins? I grew up in my neighborhood recycling. So we have that culture that put us on a fast track with students. And the cool part about that, working with the consumers and Franklin and those guys, is that you know, it's a business decision, even though it's a really good GHG solution. But if I can tell my boss, give me money, and I can see a return on investment. It used to be 7 years, and now she's pushing me for 3 to 4 years, and I'm giving her stuff that's 2 years. So good business decisions drove it. Students put it on steroids, but it's got to be in your DNA, okay?
Yeah, I'd just say it's been such a pleasure to partner with Pete. I think so much of what a utility does is behind the scenes, and that's how we like it, right? Like, we're not thinking about the lights being on right now, they're on. If they were to flicker, we would notice, right? Or if the air conditioning were to cut out. So much of what we do is behind the scenes, but what's so lovely about partnering with Pete is that we can make some of our efforts so visible. So the solar gardens that Pete already mentioned are right out there for drivers to see. The brand new chargers are right in a parking lot close to the road that are actually publicly available, placed right in front of some solar panels, so nice touch there, Pete. And so it's just such a nice visible way to show when we work with partners and can show some of that. And that's just, of course, the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we've got behind the scenes, but it's such a great example.
I'll give one back at you, Sarah, that before you watch, we were talking about battery storage. Anybody have huge batteries at your companies for battery storage? I hope you're talking about it. We've been talking about it for a power plant, but just couldn't figure it out. So again, conversation with consumers, battery storage, and so the first megawatt class battery storage from Consumers Energy is on our engineering campus. It's on their solar garden area, connected to the solar garden. But my point on that is that public utilities, business partners are ahead of the curve. And when at some point, who is going to take the risk to move forward? And I do believe consumers will have a gazillion of those across Michigan at some point in time. But the first one was in Kalamazoo by our engineering campus, and so it was great to be a part of that first thing in Michigan, something that we'll see more of. I know all of you will have large battery packs in your facilities somewhere because that's the holy grail. We can't build more power plants, got to have renewable, got to store it at night, right? We need everything we can give you right now out there, today, probably right now. And at nighttime, obviously, we're overproducing. So we can't build plants to overproduce. We got to store it somewhere, whether it's thermal or electrical. So shout out to consumers of getting ahead of the curve on battery storage.
Thank you. Eric, what was your push for working on zero net energy projects? I know it aligns with your mission pretty well, but if you could touch on that.
Yeah, so I graduated from Calvin College. I know it's Calvin University now. I still can't say it. It just doesn't sound right. But coming through Calvin, I got a great engineering degree. My professor is sitting over there that I give a lot of credit to for my push into energy management. But I had the opportunity to play basketball there. Right? They built a huge arena. They built an arena that they could put 5,000 people in to watch a basketball game. And I remember talking to my coach and saying, he said, we can't practice with all the lights on because we can't afford to operate the lights to have basketball practice. And I'm like, wait a minute. I got all of this training and education on energy efficiency and management and how to design good systems. And there's a gap in terms of how it's getting implemented into projects. So that is really what got me thinking about this. How do we take good engineering principles? How do we take energy management? We make them part of the same conversation. One's not an afterthought to the other. So that's really what got me into it. I believe strongly in making that positive human impact. There's no bigger way to have an impact than to leave a legacy for our future around the environment we live in. So that's kind of really what pushed me into it. And then to Pete's point, it's a business decision. The more you get into it and the more you work with, we have the privilege of working with some Fortune 50 companies. It's a business decision. And that's a positive thing too. If you can reduce energy costs, you can reduce operational costs. I started my career in conveyor and automation, which was hard because we justified every project by the number of employees, positions we could eliminate. I couldn't sleep at night. I love it a lot more that I can justify my job now by this is how much we've reduced your operating spend, which means you're able to retain this many employees. Or you get into an economic downturn that we may be heading into. Let's not talk about it, but that's a way to retain employees and retain pay. So it's really a passion around how to make that impact on people and how to do it in a way that allows you to use a building in the way that is best intended for the people in it and not as an afterthought.
Great, yeah. So I feel like, we've talked a lot about energy efficiency, which is a huge part of zero net energy. And I think that a lot of times people will jump straight to the renewables, which is the big point to all of this, taking care of the energy that we're using, making sure that's coming from renewable sources. But the energy efficiency is so important, right? Reducing that so you don't have to put this giant solar renewable system on your property or offsite is that first step. So I think that that's really key to point out right away.
On that particular note, we don't have a lot of space on campus. We're getting more because of raising buildings, but holy smokes, trying to position solar panels on campus. And whether some people say it's unsightly, so our first 45 kV system, we took out some trees to put it in the right spot, and they went nuts over that. So God bless those people that are trying to figure out where to put solar panels, but when you think it's easy to put it somewhere, sometimes it's a challenge. So I'm kind of giving a little credence towards the solar garden concept. If there is an acceptable place in the community to put it, others can share in it. And it's a challenge where you put them. And it's a double-edged sword for me. We have a third of a meg solar system on one of our buildings. No one can see it. And you can't see it, you can't talk about it. You can't see it, no one can argue about it too, by the way. But it's worked out well. But I'm giving a shout out on the solar garden concept for municipalities, others, because if it's acceptable one place, many people, companies, individuals can buy into it, and you don't have that uphill battle of arguing about where they go and how they get there.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about the renewable program in a little bit more detail as well, but first I want to kind of discuss the retrofit process versus the new construction process, because they're very different, and you have a lot of buildings on campus, and I think you're probably retrofitting most of them, and there will be new buildings as you take some out and as things change, but maybe you can speak to the difference between the two of them.
Yeah, so I like to designing energy efficiency and getting towards net zero energy is much easier in a new build, right? You have the opportunity at the design phase to step back and look at what every decision, how that impacts your performance, how that impacts the energy you're going to consume. So you put an energy model together, you want to change from this window to that window, you can run a model and look at the difference. It's easier in the new construction side. Things are less costly in new construction, right? The difference of adding additional insulation at the time of construction is much lower than we want to add more insulation to this ballroom. We got to tear these windows out and tear the drywall off and add more insulation. It is much more costly to do it in a retrofit application. The opportunity with retrofit application, though, is to Pete's point. A lot of these buildings were built without energy codes. I can tell you how many large, Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies we've been in that are like, oh yeah, that's a 10 by 10 hole in the roof. We just ignore it, right? So the opportunity in the retrofit market is immense from getting us towards net zero energy as a goal and working in that direction. You've got to be a little bit more creative on how to get there, though. right? Because something that's in a design phase, you know, in the new construction, you can make decisions on the fly. You can change things in and out. Sometimes you're somewhat dealt the cards that you have in an existing building. Pete talks about his 1904 building, right? There are things in a 1904 building that you cannot change, no matter how much you want to. So with that, right, you can't pick it up and rotate it 90 degrees so you've got better solar performance. It exists. So you just got to think through the retrofit side. You got to be a bit more creative. I think you would agree with that, Pete, you got to be more creative. You got to be more resourceful in how you implement some things relative to other things.
To respond on the new construction side, I'm in a unique position. I got 100 cats coming to the table with their decision of what we should be doing. I got deans, I got administrators, I got faculty, I got a president, I got students, faculty, and everyone out of the left field's coming into the table. We want an inclusive process, and so for new construction, my challenge is to have everyone listen to all the perspectives. Great design professionals bringing new concepts to the table too. I got to taper that to, I don't want to be the bleeding edge. I want to be on the cutting edge. Has this been proven or not proven? So you're weighing all those things on a capital construction project, but there has to be some fundamental principles of what the outcomes will be. Yeah, it's about the academy. Yeah, it's about the pedagogy of teaching. Yeah, it's about making sure the student's successful. And I bring to the table, well, what's the EUI on this building? Okay, well, there are students are yipping about more solar, so how are we going to do that? Oh, we got rain gardens, so we got to figure that out. It's including all those things in that potpourri and trying to make some good sausage coming out the other end. And I'll be honest, we don't get it right every time, but I think the fundamental principles of what comes out of that sausage machine, some of those fundamental principles are met. The EUIs are good. We push the engineers to make sure of that. And on the retro side of things, we're changing our paradigm right now at the institution. We've got a big RFP going out, I think, next week for for space utilization condition analysis. So I got a great president. He's a Harvard economist, okay? And he wants data, 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 data. So we're going to give him both space utilization data, we're going to give him the condition analysis data, and our team will provide the EUI data, the energy index, okay? We put those three together, and that's how we're going to be making decisions of what buildings get merged, what buildings get raised, and which buildings we're going to do retrofits. And we do a retrofit on that grandiose scale. Those are the three fundamental metrics that's going to drive our institution for the next 2 decades. What's driving us right now for the retros is the EUI. So, gee whiz. Now with sub-metering, thank you Merlo and Armstrong for our wonderful steam meters and other electric meters we have sub-metering, that we have that information at a building level, at a sub-discipline level, utility level, that we know which EUI is the hog that we need to focus on. Sometimes before that we did miss the mark. We thought that was the building without meters. We thought that's the one we got to do something on. But now there's data to drive a logical decision, a business decision as to how much money we invest based upon that. And trust me, I got to go back to my boss a year later and say, yeah, you gave me $500,000, here's the real meter data. And obviously, working with our team, we try to underestimate and overperform. So each one of those, we thought it was going to be a 3-year payback. It's a 2.5. So, and I have to do that report every single year for every one of those. We're over 100. Kelsey working on several of us right now with consumers. So we need to go back every year with that. So we take a little different perspective, long-term and short-term for our energy mods.
So, you know, you've talked a lot about the partnership between you two. Sarah, can you speak to the process of adding renewables, and if someone was interested in doing that, like Western, how do they go about that?
Yes, I think there's 2 big buckets when we talk about adding renewables. There's what's going on at the utility scale, which is what I mentioned in our clean energy plan, those 8,000 megawatts of solar that we want to add by 2050. So there is a plan to roll out that solar over the next 15 plus years that's cost effective. For example, we would want to do it all next year, right? There's a way to roll this out that's cost effective. It's not going to gouge out our customers. But there's the opportunity to do some of that faster with the renewable programs that my team runs. So you take the utility scale, clean energy plan renewables, and then you take what we call our voluntary program renewables. So that's what my team runs. And what we say there is, help us get them faster. Maybe these 10 megawatts might not come online for another 3 years because it's not economical, but if you have dollars today that can help us get it in the ground today and the property, then let's go ahead and do that. We can partner with you to get that built. You'll get credits back each month on the solar that's coming in, and you're helping us add that solar that much faster. So I think that's the easiest way to think about it. In terms of what's required, and Pete, step by step in the solar garden, so he can explain that part. But what I think is neat is on the commercial side, there's two options. We've talked a lot about solar gardens, and these have been these more kind of visible things like the one at Western Michigan. We've got one in the city of Cadillac that like a lot of city partners have combined to do. So again, it goes back to being really visible and this kind of like very tangible statement that those folks are making towards renewables. So that's our solar gardens concept. So to do that, we need a good partner, we need some property, we need to get subscribers that can subscribe to that. And by the way, it doesn't just have to be that partner. That is then opened up to any customer, residential or commercial, that wants to subscribe. But we need that partner to get it going. The other option is our large customer program, and this is larger scale renewables, a little bit further from the visibility where we're going to have that built. But what we do guarantee is that that will be built in Michigan. It's going to be additional renewables, again, that we might not have gotten to in 2035, but through your partnership, we're now being able to do it now because it's more economical and it's not impacting our customers. So that's like a larger scale that doesn't have maybe the instant recognition off the side of the highway that the solar gardens does, but it does have a lot of impact. So I think it's the easiest way to think about the two options, as well as how these voluntary programs complement our clean energy plan. So I hope that was clear.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I do also want to touch on funding, the big question around solar and other renewables. Maybe Eric, you can talk about this a little bit. And I know it'll be different from the small business and maybe building owner representative and a university. Grants and funding will be very different. So I'd like to hear from both of you on that. And Eric, you can go first.
Yeah, so on the small business side, right, it's probably one of the biggest hurdles that we see in renewables and energy efficiency, energy management, whatever it might be. How to get to net zero is funding. Okay, we talked about small business that's taking money out of their pocket to pay for their kids' sporting activities and food to invest in their buildings. So obviously, I think everybody in this room knows Consumers DTE's programs, right? They've been around since 2009. They do a phenomenal job. The two big ones that we talk about quite a bit that are very influential, probably three. One is the Michigan Saves program, low interest financing for energy efficiency for renewable projects. It's a great mechanism to help a small business, to help a mid-sized business, even a large business. $250,000 to $400,000 maybe and less. That's a great program to utilize in terms of an investment. You get bigger than that, they will go up to, I think it's $2 million in an investment on the Michigan Save side. But then you flip into PACE, Property Assessed Clean Energy. Right? Then you're taking, it's got to be 7 years or less in a payback for Michigan Saves. You can go up to 25 years with a payback on a PACE program. They take the assessment of that, the investment in renewables and energy efficiency. It's a special assessment on your property taxes, and that transfers to the property. So you sell your building in 10 years, it transfers to the property. And actually, we've started having a lot more conversation with banks lately. There's a lot of green energy programs that you get a Lake Michigan Credit Union, a local West Michigan. They're maybe not as familiar with that. You get to some of the big national branches. They actually are coming out with a lot more every month, every year of energy specific programs and how to help a business or a nonprofit or something like that get seed money to do these kind of programs.
Well, I give you a lot of credit. You business owners open your personal wallets. Maybe Sarah is working with public money, if you will, public utility. I'm working with public money and parents' monies. But I tip my hat off to those people that have personal money engaged in those decisions. While in the public sector, obviously, I use state money, I use student tuition money for my sector. I want to share with everyone that we take that money piece very seriously. It's almost like my personal money, our team's money, even though it's state and mom and dad's money that we're investing. So on the whole money side, on capital projects, it's a business decision. So when we did that LEED Platinum, and we went to the geothermal, yeah, I had to go back to the boss for more money, and we did a business case decision. The nice thing about our institutions, I'm not going to be sold to a company, a bottle pack company in New Jersey next year, okay? I think Western and all 15 publics will be around for a long, long time, so we have a long-term vision. For those people that have a company, you're probably saying, when will your company be bought? When will it be sold? And so you might have a shorter-term vision unless you have a long-term vision in your portfolio, but I'm in a little safer space. I can look long-term. So it's easy for me to look long-term and show my boss if it's an 8-year, 10-year, sometimes 15-year payback on a capital project, doing something. Boss, this building's gonna be around for 50 years, it'll pay for itself 3 times over. So I take that to get the additional resources for the capital projects. And for the smaller projects, again, I tip my hat to Consumers Energy. Yeah, it takes money I gotta get money in order to save money. And so Consumers doesn't give me free money, they give me rebate money, but I invest the money. Green revolving fund. How many companies here, institutions have a revolving fund? And it's great that Consumers is an interesting business. They're in a business to sell you less. Everyone else in the room is here to sell me more. I haven't figured that one out, Sarah, but so they're in a business to sell us less, and they're gonna pay me money to buy less of their product. And so, but I gotta put money up front. Business decision to my boss. Return on investment for my boss, so that's the money side for some of those retros in my space. And on the grant side, it seems like Disneyland. Trust me, it's not. If you want to go for a grant again, probably not in the grant business most of you here, but I'm in a public institution. They sound easy, they sound wonderful. Federal government's got billions, trillions of dollars. It's easy, it's just walk up to Lansing and they give you a check. It doesn't work that way. It's a long, drawn-out process. Many times unsuccessful. Maybe more successful now with all this money floating around. But the easiest money I got, quite frankly, was the program for meters, the charging stations. And so maybe I'll lean on Sarah a little bit to talk about the easiest money I ever got. And then we have 20 charging stations, as well as I have a fleet of 400 vehicles. And Sarah's team did a phenomenal job. If you have a large fleet, it didn't cost me a dime. And what an incredible report they gave me as a path to go to the EVs, Power My Fleet program. I finally remembered it. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to talk about some really free money that was the easiest thing I ever got in 43 years.
Okay, well with that lead in, I'll just, a quick plug for Power My Fleet. So it launched a year ago last June. It's a complement to Power My Drive, which is our residential and public charger program. So Power My Fleet, there's 2 components to it right now. There's one where you can get a free fleet assessment, which is what Pete is mentioning, where we partner with one of our consulting partners, and they'll look at your fleet, see how you're using it today, and figure out where you can start to electrify, what makes sense. And we've done 30 assessments to date, and in every single one of them so far, there's been at least one vehicle that would make sense to electrify today and start saving folks money. So I think that's been a really exciting finding. So we've done about 30 of these so far. And then the second part of the component of the program, of which Pete is the first one so far to be able to take advantage of, is we do have some rebate money available for those chargers. So once you've learned where your fleet can go, and you've decided what kind of charging needs that you have, with our help of course, then we can help you get there by rebating some of those chargers. So that's Power My Fleet.
If you think public utilities like working for the federal government, oh my gosh, it was so easy. Seriously, it was easy to go through this. They made it so easy for us to get these charging stations. I was just pinching myself. I mean, I gotta spend more time and people with all these federal forms and grants. It drives me nuts. But thanks to Consumers, we got there easy. So thank you.
Fantastic. That's that hometown service that we try for. Yes.
I do want to touch briefly on the energy revolving fund that you talk about, right? So Western has one, Calvin has one, right? The Calvin Energy Revolving Fund, SURF. That's something we have taken to private businesses as well. If you're putting $10,000 a month into your utility bills and you're able to cut that by $2,000, great, that is $2,000 you can add to your bottom line, you can do other things with. But it's a great opportunity to use what they call a revolving fund. Take that $2,000 a month, store it on the side that you were paying out. You were good paying that to consumers or DTE. Let's put that aside and continue to reinvest that in the next opportunity. And we've seen some tremendous success with that in smaller private businesses that are like, well, we're happy with our bottom line performance right now. Our shareholders are happy with how we're performing. Well, great, let's take the money that we're saving and set it aside, and that starts funding a project a year from now or 5 years from now as we continue to have Pete's chart, right? And we want to see that chart continue down. It's sometimes hard to continue to go back to the well and look for more capital. There's ways to use the money you're already spending in that revolving fund philosophy and reinvest that for additional savings. So I didn't want to glance over that.
Yeah, there's got to be some strict rules with that because I'm not the chief financial officer, okay? I'm not the president, so when you have that capacity building up, those checkbooks do get rated. And I've been around long enough to say, you want my keys to the desk? You want to rate it? Get my keys to the desk too. Oh, I want your keys, so don't raid that fund. So, and the for-profit sector too, obviously you've got people who have other priorities. Trust me, we've got hundreds of competing priorities than energy, okay? You can just imagine, your business have many competing priorities too for money, but have some strict rules in there and stick to it because it's so easy to that checkbook to be rated, you back down to zero.
Great, well thank you so much for all that information. With the time we have left, I do want to open it up to some audience Q&A while we have the panelists available. So, is anyone brave enough to ask a question? A couple people. Sherry, do we have a microphone back there?
Actually, I got two. Sarah, I wanted to say thank you for my four past starters up at Mackinac.
Fantastic.
Bethany Taylor contacted me 2.5–3 years ago and actually started the process, and we completed it last fall. We've got 4 nice fast starters sitting up at Mackinac at our casino. And in our building, I'm a casino electrician. We decided to call it we just keep reopening the building. When you're speaking of commission, with the new technology and with everything out there, you walk through every 3 or 4 years and you bring your vendors in, and walk them through and say, here's what we got, let's do it. And it's in no time passing for it.
That's great. You have to have that culture. I mean, Kelsey can tell you, we've hired her and others in this room to come in for recommissioning, but you have to have that culture. You have that culture and you have that drive to do it. And if you don't have the personal drive, your boss has the personal drive, every 5, 6, 10, 20 years, it's going to be out of whack. And you don't even know it's out of whack. You don't even know you're losing money. So kudos to you for having that culture.
Pete, I love to use the example, right? You don't buy a car, unless it's an electric car. You don't buy a car and say, I'm not going to change my oil. Right? I mean, essentially, if you consider building commissioning, retro commissioning, and some of the monitoring-based commissioning, right? Our dashboard tells us we have a flat tire. It tells us we need gas. It tells us we need to change our oil. But why are we operating buildings that we spend millions of kilowatt hours in, and a lot of people are operating them in the dark? Right? That's monitoring-based commissioning. You're giving yourself the dashboard we drive around with in the car every single day. I mean, sometimes it tells me that it tells you your blinkers on when you're not changing lanes, and yet we're going to manage a building that uses that kind of energy and think, oh, we saw our bills last month, but by that point they're 6 months old and nobody knows what happened months ago. So
Yeah, that internet of everything is selling us. I've got a widget in it that can tell us something, and I'm buried in internet of everything. And so our goal right now is if these new buildings, they got more stuff in it that I'm trying to sort out which stuff I need to manage and which stuff I need to ignore. And which stuff do not want smart technology because I can't manage it. So again, we do the monitoring-based commissioning, and trust me, the monthly report that comes out is ungodly, so we have to have a team meeting to prioritize it. A lot falls off the table because it's telling me the blinkers, and that's not important to me right today. There's other stuff like, holy smokes, how did we not even know that? Go figure.
I'll let you introduce yourself too. We should have done that before. That question back there was David Odawa, for those of you who couldn't see him or don't know him.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Mallett with Green Portfolio Solutions. We help building owners and developers save money on their utilities by using the new PACE law, Property Assessed Clean Energy. And PACE has been somewhat successful on the east side of Michigan. And I'm just wondering what we might be able to do to spur more PACE dollars with local developers, building owners, and nonprofits, because Eric, you know that PACE saves energy, water, and you can install renewables with zero money up front up to 25-year term.
I think one of the biggest challenges that we see with PACE, right, and often becomes a hurdle, is we've got to be far enough down the road with the design to be able to project some of the savings and do some of the, right, to be able to look at what it looks like. People get hesitant, they get afraid of the investment to design it far enough to be able to utilize PACE. Consumers with their Z&E program, they offer some early on incentives to be able to help with the charrette, to be able to help with the concepting of what could we do from an energy perspective that helps some of that hurdle. We have seen personally in our business with some of the organizations we work with, there's a hesitancy to get far enough to be able to engage a PACE program and the legal fees and some of the associated things that come with that they end up backing out of it too early. So that's a big push that we're trying to educate people. We're trying to help them understand that you don't have to get a fully completed design. You don't have to be at shovels in the ground to be able to engage something like a PACE process, but that's often a misconception that we see.
I was just going to say, as part of the PACE project, we do a energy audit, and I'm wondering what the energy audit should be front-ended and maybe somehow granted or paid for by a third party, so that would at least give the owner or developer a roadmap on where PACE is going to save them dollars. It makes sense.
If I could dream, you just nailed it, right? Some of that upfront, that first piece of that audit, that first piece of that understanding of where, right, the roadmap, where they could get to, they can get intimidated by that and then never start down the journey.
Yeah, and to add to that, it's simple to calculate an EUI, okay? You got your energy, you got your square footage, find the hogs, and then obviously take a look at what tier ASHRAE survey you want done. And so we had some cursory, we did most of our campus. He used to work with us over the years, and so we didn't do a high level in all the buildings. We did low levels in certain areas, and like, oh my gosh, we got to really get in the bowels of this building, figure out what the heck's going on. And so those energy audits are an expense, but that is you need to have that expense, and I wish there was more grants for that kind of thing. And I don't know if consumers got grants for energy audits, maybe they do, but a detailed audit, you're gonna have to cough up some money, but it will be a return on investment.
I think there may be state funding too, Eagle on their website, that you can get for potentially for audits. And I know there's new monies coming because of the infrastructure plan and ARPA, and so there could be, you know, new monies opening up at the state of Michigan as well in the next few months.
Yeah, there is. Eagle has a program, as Pete mentioned, though sometimes the hoops and hurdles to jump through to get that funding can be challenging. But
question here, Ben Benning with Catalyst Partners. Question is for Peter and Sarah. I don't know, 3-4 years ago when Patty Poppy was touting the clean energy plan, she was talking about the various levels of solar, large-scale solar, and she talked about, you know, brownfields first, then maybe underused or underutilized farmland, and then rooftop solar on large industrial sites. So I'm wondering, you know, are you looking at Western? Are you looking at like parking lot ground-mounted elevated solar at all, like what they did at Michigan State as part of that? And I guess how does that tie in with maybe what Consumers Energy is thinking about doing. Is
Yeah.
there's a lot of parking space, or a lot of parking lots out there, but
We have looked at that. And, every year we do an assessment of where we want to go with solar. And let's face it, of course, pushing pipes in the ground and putting solar in the cornfield, much less expensive than carports, okay? And so the tier in my mind is, love to do carports, but return on investment's more challenging unless it's a P3, resisting that for a lot of reasons. And then of course it's rooftops, and then from there it's on some land that is not undevelopable. So we went with consumers of land that we did not want to develop. And I wish there was more money. I wish I was at Michigan State. My counterpart there, Dan, did a great job, but they have a lot of financial capacity, and they did do a large P3 there. So you look at their parking lots, they have a lot of carport solar. And I think it's inevitable at some point in time that we more carport solar, especially in an urban setting. Where's the farmland downtown here? There's no space. So you got rooftops, and of course you've got a lot of parking in various locations. So it has to be cost effective, and I am using parent money, taxpayer money, and I could not justify it. I'm not going to spend your money what they want to return on investment.
Yeah, just to speak to the stratification, I would say that still holds. Brownfields are an awesome target for solar if they are underutilized. Fantastic way to go. And then kind of spreading out from there. I used farmland, I would put parking structures there. I was talking to a colleague in Arizona, and she said that the number one thing that EV drivers complain about is having shade at charging stations, which makes sense in Arizona, but I mean, days like today here, it makes total sense. So definitely see the potential for that. The fact is though that we are planning a lot of solar. I said 8,000 megawatts. 1 megawatt of solar takes between 5 and 10 acres. So if you start to multiply that out, it is a lot that we need. And so at this point, while we do have that kind of, that stacking in mind, we're going where there's supply right now and where it makes sense economically. So, but we're also paying really close attention to what's going on federally and state-wise in terms of incentivizing things like brownfields. So I think we're definitely still keeping that in mind, but we have to look under every rock at this point.
One more thing to add to that is that, of course, depending upon the size of the solar or even charging stations, move the power from that point to a building or power to the grid, sometimes that exceeds the cost of the solar garden. So you are limited to that distribution distance. And so we obviously looked on our campus, put up charging stations when we had power close by to limit that infrastructure cost. And that is sometimes a hidden cost on your initial math. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I'd love to do it here, but power distributions is like a mile away. Well, who's going to pay for that? And then the math doesn't show out. So sometimes you get lucky where you want it, or you strategize the infrastructure cost, minimize, so you can get those charging stations in very cost effectively. You can get the solar in cost effectively.
One thing I wanted to just think about too, there's a lot of push for solar right now, right? We can produce power, we can use solar to make the power once we electrify, but some of what Pete touched on earlier, right? You have a byproduct of steam from your power plant generation. I think we have an opportunity to, as we work towards net zero, to not forget things like that, right? We have a lot of people that we talk with that are like, I want to be net zero, I just need to put a whole solar field out here. And you're like, let's think about it. You have an industrial process that has a huge byproduct of heat, and you do nothing with it, right? So in terms of renewables, but also not forgetting about energy sources that we already are utilizing that we could utilize better, right? Could utilize in different ways. We're in development with a developer right now to put in a biomass generator, solar, use lake source, a water source, heat pump system. You start putting all of those things together. Any one of them individually, we were going to need 3 times the solar generation to overcome what we're doing with some biomass and using water source heat pump or water source geothermal. So I think that's a key to this as well, right? We want to get to 8 million megawatts, but I think on a facility level, outside of the utility level, we need to think about how each opportunity comes together, because we had waste heat from an industrial process that they're like, whatever, we just reject it outside. I'm like, well, we're using energy to reject heat. In another area, we're using energy to create heat. Why don't we address that before we try to buy the property next to your building, cut down a bunch of trees to put in more solar? So I think those things need to go together, and it's something we can't forget about.
You all have a thermal load, not just electric, right? And so if you have a large thermal load, that cogen is a sweet spot. Of course, large campuses, large corporations have that. And I'll give you one short story. A few people in this room know about that. 25 years ago, we had this aha moment. I've got a large premier ice hockey, Western Bronco Hockey Arena. This is crazy. I think it was built before my time. Under one roof, one half the place is a hockey arena, the other one's a Olympic-sized pool. Okay, so yeah, we have humidity issues and all that sort of stuff. That's like a mechanical engineering challenge, but the aha moment is, so in order to make ice, I have to reject a lot of heat. In order to heat the pool, I had import heat, right? And so it was one of those things like, what? And why did it take us so long to figure this out? Heat transfer plate, and for 25 years, we're heating an Olympic-sized pool with no steam.
That's an exact example of what I'm talking about, right? That often gets overthought or overlooked, and people are like, oh, I need to buy this, and I just need to produce it in a different way. And you're like, no, we can do things with the energy that's consumed in one area and reused in another.
Thanks, everybody. My name is Matt Hugh, and I'm from Calvin University, and I'm really thrilled with all the great stuff that's going on here. But if you look at the macro scale, we are emitting more carbon dioxide every year from energy consumption, and all the efforts to do energy conservation and energy efficiency and renewables isn't moving the needle at the global scale. So you might want to ask why. And one reason that comes up for that is the rebound effect. And the rebound effect occurs when you put in energy efficiency intervention and you change behavior so you don't save as much energy as you thought you would, or you take the positive net present value savings from your energy efficiency intervention or your renewables and you use that to expand the economy, which happens. So my question to the panelists is, in all of your work, is there any efforts to track rebound effects, not only at the scale of a facility, but also the effect of energy efficiency in the macroeconomy? Thank you.
Tough question. Sherry, you said there would be softballs.
I don't know who invited him.
But I think that we have to have those honest conversations, and that's a tough one. And that's a complex one, and it's not all roses about doing energy conservation, and it's all going to be hunky-dory, and we have a plan. And I don't have the answer for that, but I think the closest answer is those tough questions need to be on the table. We need to recognize it, and we need to talk about it. I don't have a solution for that one. That's a tough one.
So I have the privilege of being president of the Association of Energy Engineers. And that's something AEE is investing in right now, right? They're recognizing that same thing. They're like, wait a minute, we take it out of here and it gets put in here. They're just not far enough along in that study to have an understanding of that. I want to say they partnered with Virginia Tech to try to get more information on that, but it's just not far enough down the road yet.
Yeah, I'd say early stages too, I'm thinking about with electric transportation, that's been one of the things that's been mentioned is, especially with autonomous vehicles, we've actually ended up with more cars on the road because of that. So the good news is that'll be relatively easy to measure, but we're just like still trying to figure that one out. On the energy waste side, I'm looking at my team, I don't know if we've observed a rebound effect. No. Okay. So yeah, pretty nuanced question there, but I think we focus on that initial push.
More questions?
I will also say, while you're looking for their hands, not to harp on the struggles with solar, but when I was working at E3m, we looked looked at a few facilities that have the pre-engineered buildings. The roof can't support the solar, and so there's all these challenges with renewables. And I think we're having like this really great discussion. I don't want to end on like some negative notes on it, but there's a lot of feasibility issues, which are really important to bring to the table so that people can come up with solutions for them. Because as you're saying, you don't have the land for all of the solar, right? And people aren't able to put them on their pre-engineered buildings. So there's a lot of stuff to overcome still, but I think that there are some good notes.
Can I impose on this audience and share a run around? 3 people. Give me something you're darn proud of that fits this conversation in your organization. If you're not down proud of anything, you're probably got to leave this room. So you're proud of something, right? So Sherry can run over you and give you a point of pride. Something your organization feels good. It doesn't have to be changing the whole planet, but something that's small, medium. What are you doing that you're proud of?
We've actually reduced our consumption by over 7 million kilowatt hours and 35,000 MMBTUs. And what I'm proud of is that we actually go help other casinos do what we're doing.
Give them a round of applause. Anybody else proud of something? Come on, don't be bashful. What are you proud of? That'd be 7 million kilowatts.
I'm super proud of everyone who's involved in Michigan Battle of the Buildings and how huge it's gotten in 8 years. I can't believe when this first started, it was like, what if we get 1 million square feet to compete? Now we're 253 million square feet competing across the state. I'm incredibly proud of this program. I'm proud of the USGBC of West Michigan. I'm proud of my staff. I have a lot to be proud of.
Let's give a round of applause for that.
I'm really proud that we've had a law here in Michigan called Phase Property Assessed Clean Energy for over 10 years. And our administrator has done about 60 projects, of which our company's been able to do 6. So we've done 10% of all the projects in Michigan. And we've kind of reached a point where there's over 200 million now of projects in PACE, new development and renovation. So we're just looking to expand it further across the entire state, not just in Southeast Michigan, but PACE is on the move and more people will be hearing about it in the future. Thank you.
Sharon.
Jen Luketka with Waypoint Energy. I'm really proud that our team this year has added almost 50% more to our team. So we've added a lot more jobs in energy efficiency, and everyone is doing really great. So something to be proud of.
All right, we got this rolling now. You're next.
I'm really proud of the church that I attend. We have a mission statement. Part of that is take care of creation. And we retrofitted, and during the COVID time, retrofitted all the fluorescent tubes. We replaced we put in 2x2 LED panels, and we only have, I think, 4 fixtures that are not LED. So the whole church has been converted over. It was done for your labor through a lot of retired people and so forth. And I'm kind of proud to say that we are doing our mission, and we're using the money saved from that to do other missions. So Eastern Avenue.
House of Worship category here in about half an hour.
I had to look it up on the website, which is why didn't immediately raise my hand, but so Catalyst Partners, I'm proud of the fact that we've certified over 380 projects for our clients, and that's various green building certifications, LEED, Living Building Challenge, WELL, Healthy Buildings. We also helped over 27 million square feet of projects and gotten our clients over $1.6 million of incentives.
Sherry, can you give that to Ryan? Ryan, are you proud of a sustainable tech park, Ryan?
You read my mind, Pete. I'm Ryan Musk, Fishbeck. I'm a civil engineer, so I might be the only civil engineer. What Pete's referring to, so we helped Western develop the BTR Park in Western Michigan's campus. It's a Parkview campus. The first phase was developed about 20 years ago, and just recently, about 2 years ago, the second phase was constructed. The mission of that park is to encourage businesses that fit the mission of the university, that partner with the university, but sustainability was at the core of the development. And one of the encouraging things that we were able to implement was a design and maintenance standard. So the park was developed as a sustainable sites certified park, but any tenant that moves into the park has design and maintenance requirements to follow through. And the first tenant for the phase 2 was, I think they opened about a year ago. It's Ascension Borges. So they followed this guidance, and they were required to follow through with sustainability when it comes to the site development, the property development, the site lighting standards, and then with the building and the energy systems, they had to implement sustainable measures into the buildings as well. So that's one building. There's more in the works, and in the phase 1, there's, I don't know, Pete, what is there, 10, 12 buildings?
Yeah, I think we have 13 buildings there, all sustainable, and our focus there was to take a tech park, and we're looking for some certification of sustainable tech parks. This is an interesting sector, and so we found one there, and with Fishbeck's help, we have a sustainable tech park that drives more sustainability if you want to build in a park.
Yeah, so that's a great example of a vision that started 25 years ago when sustainability was, it was active, but it wasn't what it is today. So Western had the vision, and it's awesome to see that go to phase 2 now and encouraging, kind of being a catalyst to encourage sustainability there.
I'm Reina Garcia, and I'm proud of being Latina, representing my community here in this space. And recently, I got invited to be part of the EH0 to bring this message to my community. So for that reason, I feel so proud to be here. Thank you.
For those who don't know what EH0 is, I mentioned it briefly this morning. It's our new program, Grand Rapids Policies and Programs for Equitable, Healthy, Zero Carbon Buildings. And we are leading with equity to get to a zero carbon footprint for our buildings across Grand Rapids. So we're happy to have equity partners that are helping us because if they're not at the table in the beginning, then you're not doing it right. So. Anybody else? Don't want to miss anybody.
So we work for Consumers Energy, specifically the energy efficiency programs. And we are very proud of the fact that since program inception back in 2009, we have saved our customers over $4 billion off of their utility bill. Billion with a B.
Awesome. Those were all really great to hear. And we thank you very, very much for your time. There is that optional the tour of the hotel. If you want to join that, you can meet at the base of the stairs. I think Anna and Maggie are leading that from the City Flats Hotel. They take about 10 minutes, and they'll probably be taking groups of 10 every 10 minutes or so. The exhibitor hall is also still open. I think we are starting back here at 2:45 for the award ceremony. So you got some time. Good time to mingle, ask the panelists more questions if you want individually, and check out those exhibitor tables and make sure you get your cards punched. So thank you again. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.